Greetings, all of our attendees at today's
Добро пожаловать
sixth
все наши
panel discussion
участники
under the
на
Central
нашей
Asia Trade
шестой
Forum.
панельной сессии в рамках 10-го
As a first
торгового
question, I want
форума
to make sure
Среднеазиатского,
that
Центральноазиатского.
I can
Во-первых,
be
я
heard.
хочу...
There was some technical issue with the sound on the video that preceded me.
We can hear you.
Excellent, and
Yes.
thank you for confirming. My name is Michael Boyd. I am the chief of party for the newly starting USAID-funded Power Central Asia activity, which will work in all countries of the region. As many may know, USAID already has ongoing activities, Power the Future, Central Asia Regional Electricity Market, and we will be following on and supporting and continuing that work as we start up. It's a pleasure for me to be with you. For me, while I'm physically not back in Almaty yet, I'm looking forward to returning. I spent many years in Almaty in the late 90s working on water management issues, as well as in the early 2000s working with USAID on general economic development issues. So for me, it will be a return home, and it's a great pleasure to join everyone. We have a very good panel today on a very interesting topic for Central Asia's economic development, which is the improvement and cooperation on water management and how it can contribute to improved economic development. It cuts across sectors. Agriculture is a clear user of water as well as a beneficiary. Energy, there's a great deal of hydropower in Central Asia. And of course, it's an essential piece of the social welfare of communities to have potable water, fresh drinking water, and wastewater treatment that works. So there are a wide variety of aspects of water management that contribute to economic development. And with my distinguished panelists, we'll explore a number of these, and then we will look forward to any further discussion or questions and answers. With that said, I will simply briefly introduce each of the panelists. Myself, Yekaterina Strikelova is the program manager of the Water Initiative Support Program under the Central Asia Regional Environmental Center for Central Asia. And Yekaterina has been working on water management issues at the center for over 10 years and has been managing a significant multi-donor funded initiative, the Water Support Initiative, that cuts across a wide variety of aspects of how to engage better cooperation and coordination in integrated water management in the region. In addition, our panel contains Richard Volk, who is going to be very soon, he's already, but will soon be in the region as the new chief of party for the USAID-funded Water and Vulnerable Environment Project, a 5-year project that will work closely with a variety of stakeholders as well as other donors to engage and support coordination and improvement of water management. We also are very privileged to have Andre Verli, the regional water advisor in Central Asia for the Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation. Andre has been in that position since 2017. And before that, he was actually engaged with the SDC on global issues related to climate change mitigation, water management, and other areas. So he brings a wide range of experience, both to the region and to the topic of water management. And the final panelist that we have, by far not the least, is Marat Beksultanov, who's the director of the Agritech Hub, Kazakhstan. And Marat has very deep and rich experience as a program manager working on the application of technology to a variety of issues related to resource management, not only water, he'll talk about water today, but also land use resources and a variety of other topics. So as I said, we have a very interesting, diverse, and panel for everybody. So we look forward to moving forward and just presenting and hearing from you as well. Before that, I would like to turn the floor briefly for some special introductory remarks from the United States Ambassador to Uzbekistan, Mr. Daniel Rosenblum. Ambassador Rosenblum has been in that position since May of 2019, so for over a year and under challenging circumstances as we all are experiencing. Prior to that, he was for 4 years the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the State Department of the United States, responsible for Central Asia region. And before that, he spent 6 years more broadly managing as the coordinator State Department for State Department, all U.S. Bilateral assistance in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and the Caucasus. So Ambassador Rosenblum has a very, very deep and rich engagement with the region as well. And having worked with him before myself, I know he has a great appreciation, actually, of the interesting aspects of water management in Central Asia. With that, I would like to turn over the floor briefly to Ambassador Rosenblum.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished partners and participants, Assalamu alaikum, Dobry dien, good afternoon. I'm pleased to take part in the 10th Annual Central Asia Trade Forum. This is the third time I participated in the forum, including last year's in Shymkent, but it's the first time I've done it virtually. Over the past 8 months, it seems we're doing everything for the first time virtually. The COVID pandemic has reminded us all that certain kinds of challenges can only be addressed through collective action, through international cooperation. The coronavirus does not respect national borders, so our response to it must also cross those borders. And in much the same way, water, that vital and diminishing resource, must be managed across borders and through collective cooperative action. The session you are about to participate in will focus on the economic benefits of water resource management cooperation in Central Asia. It's the first time we've had such a session at the forum, and it was probably overdue. In Central Asia, water is an essential pillar for economic development. It's an essential input for many goods that the region exports, and it's the backbone for agriculture and power generation in the region. Clean water is important for the health of the people who make up the country's workforces, and the region's spectacular bodies of water are vital to its tourism industry, and that promises to be a sustainable export well into the future. Almost 90% of Central Asia's water is transboundary, so the increasing demand for the region's diminishing water resources requires joint planning and close coordination between governments, experts, and users. For the past 15 years, the U.S. Agency for International Development has worked with Central Asian water users and government officials to strengthen transboundary water cooperation. Over the past 5 years alone, the U.S. government has committed $35 million to enhance dialogue on transboundary water issues in the region. One of the most successful impacts of this work has been the creation of so-called small basin councils throughout Central Asia and Afghanistan. In one example, USAID helped communities on both sides of the Padshah Ata River, which separates Uzbekistan and the Kyrgyz Republic, to form a small basin council to cooperate on water resources. These communities now regularly meet in order to hold conversations, share ideas, and learn about each other's irrigation techniques. After visiting the Uzbek side of the river, one farmer from the Kyrgyz Republic convinced his community to apply drip irrigation techniques to utilize the limited land and water available for agriculture. There are many such examples throughout the region where collaboration through these small basin councils not only helped conserve water on both sides of the border, but also helped generate more income for farmers by improving agricultural production techniques. And last month, USAID launched a new 5-year, $24 million regional water project the USAID Water and Vulnerable Environment Program. This new program will continue the work of strengthening transboundary cooperation on shared water resources, in part by using data to demonstrate the economic benefits of this cooperation. 2020 has been a challenging year for all of us, but I'm optimistic that 2021 will be a year when we can increasingly focus on the hard but rewarding and necessary work of developing common solutions to common challenges. And no challenge is more relevant today and more ripe for creative solutions than the smart and economically sustainable usage of water. I wish you all a productive and interesting session. Thank you. Kata rahmat. Spasibo balshoye.
And thank you, Ambassador Rosenblum, for those very insightful overview words of introduction to our panel that's coming. And in particular, I'd like to start the panel discussion with a presentation by Yekaterina Strikelova, to which I believe the ambassador referred some aspects of that, on water cooperation at the local level and the experience of the Smart Waters project. Yekaterina?
Thank you, Michael. I just share my screen to show you the presentation. And yeah, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In this session, we are looking for the water cooperation and its influence on the economic development of the countries. However, development of the local level is impossible without involvement of local communities, changing behavior and trust building. In my presentation, I will focus on the results of 5-year USAID CAREC Smart Waters project. First, we need to understand the preconditions which influence on the development within the region, including cooperation development in the field of the water resource management. And the first issue here is, of course, the Aral Sea catastrophe, which made countries being more accurate in terms of water resources and its management, find opportunity for saving their ecosystems. Growing in the population also required more water resources, and the transboundary character of the majority of rivers in the region required more attention to cooperation. All this leads to rising pressure on the water resources. At the same time, costs of limited cooperation are very significant. Local conflicts, not only related to water resources, but also on the other issues, leads to decreasing investment attractiveness. However, we are many opportunities for improving cooperation in the region and for receiving economic benefits for stakeholders. The Smart Waters project worked on 3 levels of water cooperation. The first is international level. Here we supported delegation from our target countries during the participation in the international events. Second level is regional. Here we have established the regional steering committee formed with the nominated representatives of the line ministries and agencies. In addition, we supported the platform of cooperation of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Parliament representatives. These platforms, they're used for exchange of experience and best practices. However, my presentation will be focused on the 3rd level, local level. In this level, the project facilitate, established and support the small basin councils. Small basin councils is a consultative advisory body consisted from different stakeholders. Here you can see the map of Smart Waters project. We worked on the 8 small transboundary watersheds, established 13 small basin councils. You see that the project covers 6 countries, 5 Central Asia states and Afghanistan. Based on our experience, we can highlight the importance of local communities' involvement into the cooperation building process and the opportunities which are possible due to this engagement. Involvement of local communities into the decision-making process in the frames of the small basin councils functions is a very important element of cooperation. Organization of joint meetings allows finding consensus among riparian states and is a key element for water diplomacy at local level. During these joint meetings, small basin council members can discuss challenges, find acceptable solutions based on compromise, and of course, plan the implementation joint activities. For us, during the Smart Waters project implementation, people's perception was very important. This is crucial for making people working together for the common good. Joint Small Basin Councils meeting is one of the options for changing people's behavior. Another option is celebrating the river days. This is a joint event where the whole community is involved. And we are proud of the fact that it was the initiative from the local communities we have just supported. This also helped in establishing an informal relation among the specialists and just people across the border. The term celebration itself is something cooperative. It's already changing the perception of the water resources from the source of competitions to source of cooperation. Another opportunity for changing people's behavior is providing platform for experience exchange. And in the Smart Waters project, we did that through the organization of Small Basin Councils forums. Small Basin Councils forums is a dialogue platform for representatives from the local territories. There they are learning from each other and discuss new ideas. To sum up my presentation, I would like to highlight the following. As we can see, the water cooperation cannot be limited only cooperation between water agencies. It's also involvement of different stakeholders and different economic sectors, which can help in development territories in different aspects. Building trust among riparian countries leads to increasing water cooperation at transboundary level, and decreasing the tension can help in forming more attractive investment climate. Joint planning, based on interest of all stakeholders, is a basis for sustainable development of transboundary bases. Identification of benefits for all, it's a new opportunities for development of the regional economics. And in the end of my presentation, I would like to share some quotes from the fields, from the members of the Small Basin Council. The first quote is from Doranbek Mamadiyev, chair of Kyrgyz Small Basin Council on Isfara River. He said, "In the past, I had my own plans on how to support my family. After becoming the Small Basin Council member and chairman, I started thinking widely, how to develop, how to improve relations with the neighbors, how to avoid conflicts. Being regular farmers at the beginning of Small Basin Council operations, he was selected as a chairperson. His personal change and change of his perception of transboundary cooperation now leads to be basin development and attracting new investments. Introduction of water-saving technology, increasing the yields and experience and knowledge exchange are the main task for the chair of Kazakh side of Aspara River Basin, Shirin Badalov. His farming is a model for the local farmers, and thanks to his experience and knowledge, he was selected as a chairperson for the Small Basin Council. He said, "I could see how much water was being wasted. And I also know that here more farms downstream depending on the same water. So I decide to change. Shirin understands the value of water, and being the chairperson is doing his best to build cooperation with the riparian side. Rustam Shamir Saidov is a chairperson of the Tajik Isfara Small Basin Council for the past several years. Thanks to his initiative and enthusiasm, for the first time in Central Asia, the Isfara River Day celebration took place. Rustam sees a huge potential of the basin's development through cooperation with the neighbors. I used to tell my counterparts here and across the border, we should forget politics and enjoy good relationships, he said. The problems of the small basins was not being solved for the long time. Establishment of small basin councils finally allowed moving forward. As Mazalbek Mirsamamatov, member of Kyrgyz Pachata River Small Basin Council, said, there are not issues that appeared yesterday, but there was no platform to discuss it or to try and find solutions. Finding compromise, receiving benefits, and introduction of new technologies are the basis for the development of Central Asia remote areas. Good neighborhood allows to attract investments, while integrated approach allows development based on existing resources. Thank you for your attention, and I am ready to answer your questions, if any.
Thank you, Yekaterina, very much. I think unless we see any specific questions coming from the audience, which you can enter in the Q&A box or via chat, either one, we'll hold questions until all of the panelists have presented, and then we'll proceed. And I just wanted to say, that was a very thought-provoking presentation with respect to how Smart Waters has really worked at a variety of levels. And it's easy for people to think about just water management as a top-level activity. But water has this interesting characteristic. It flows downhill, it crosses borders, it forms borders, and it builds and it separates communities. So working at the community level offers really very important opportunities for, especially as the farmers themselves put it, seeing the economic benefits to themselves, their communities, their families, and the broader groups. So it's thank you, and I think we'll have good questions and interesting further discussion on that.
Thank you.
With that, I will now offer the floor to our second panelist, or we have four, and the next one will be Richard Volk, who will be speaking to us from the middle of the night in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Richard, for your commitment to this particular panel, because it'll be very important, I think, for you, both as input and as being associated with everybody, to talk about your global experience. You bring a very broad global experience from around the world in terms of transboundary water management and water resource management from East Africa to the Caucasus to South Asia, Southeast Asia. And so it'll be very beneficial to us all to hear your words now on the global challenge of water insecurity and approaches that can engage the private sector.
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to begin by thanking the organizers of the Trade Forum for this opportunity to tell you a bit about the upcoming Regional Water and Vulnerable Environment activity. I'm, of course, very pleased to be part of this dialogue because clearly the economic benefits of transboundary water cooperation are a crucial factor in the impetus for any change. Of course, the world is changing very quickly in many ways, and those who don't keep up with, or rather even stay ahead of those changes, will certainly be worse off than they are today. And I'm not just talking about Central Asia, I'm talking about every region, and in fact, every country, every sector, every business, and really every one of us, every individual. We all must face change and be ready to adjust our long-held views of what we think is the right way of doing things, and also what we think is possible. But I doubt that I need to tell any of you listening here this afternoon that water is a critical factor in the success of your business. Water is, of course, essential for production, processing, transportation, trade, and the energy that's needed to make all of those needs possible. So yes, the world runs on water, but unfortunately the planet's river basins are today facing unprecedented levels of overuse, pollution, land degradation, and lost or diminishing ecosystem services. Nearly a fifth of the world's population lives in river basins that are affected by severe water stress, as defined by the ratio of total water withdrawals to total available supply, when that ratio exceeds 40% on an annual basis. And the demand for water, of course, is growing as a result of population growth, industrialization, the demand for consumer goods. And this is all happening at a time when climate change is imposing significant uncertainty on water availability, as well as a time when in many places, water management institutions and practices are just not really prepared for the task. In reality, our global water resource management challenges, though, are less technical in nature than they really are about human in nature. In other words, they're about creating a common societal understanding of how much water is available and what the demand for water is both today and in the future. Our challenge, therefore, is to reach a point in our ability to have a factual basis for discussing and coming to agreement on any needed changes. I'll say more about that in a few minutes, but I'd first of all like to continue along the lines of why this should matter to anyone interested in economic growth and trade. So just a couple of months ago, the Bloomberg Agriculture Spot Index, which tracks global crop prices, they indicated that the gauge for 9 crop prices has risen 28% due to extreme drought and flooding since just April this year. So crop prices have skyrocketed, which of course have only added to the financial stress caused by the COVID pandemic. And this should come as a surprise really only to anyone who has not paid attention to the warnings by climate scientists of the disruptions in crop production and food security due to increasingly unpredictable weather patterns. Here in the United States, our Federal Reserve Board of Governors releases each year a financial stability report. This year's report came out just last week, and for the first time ever, includes a section on climate change with a warning. Their warning is really quite simple. They say that climate change poses important risks to financial stability and to a degree that could result in major market fluctuations. Now, this seems obvious to many of us, but it is a very big statement from what is a closely watched and generally very fiscally conservative group of federal policymakers. The point of all this is that those of you in the private sector face uncertainties and risks, as do we all, and that many of those risks are related to the variability of water supply. And of course, that means both quantity and quality of supply. You might see that those risks are intrinsic to your sector or your particular business, but they should really be seen as societal risks, that is, to both national and regional financial stability. And here's the bottom line. We need to consider the water management challenge with much greater urgency, for it will take years to bring about the changes that are needed to get us closer to optimal, equitable, and sustainable use of our water. The manner in which the challenge is confronted will determine future patterns of investment, the potential for international finance, macroeconomic growth, and even to what degree the poverty burden will weigh down growth in trade. Let me say a few words now about how we hope the regional water and vulnerable environment activity can contribute to and support your own efforts at water resources management in Central Asia. First of all, the purpose of this new USAID-funded activity is to strengthen water cooperation across Central Asia for improved stability, economic prosperity, and healthy ecosystems. It's about transboundary water resource management based on a systems approach that will simultaneously consider the water demand for multiple purposes, as has been stated, including for energy, food production, and the environment. Because water, energy, and food security are so tightly interlinked in Central Asia, we consider that this so-called WEF nexus approach is absolutely fundamental to the future. The aspirational goal of any such effort is eventually to optimize the use of water so that all water demands are sustainably met well into the future. But that will take time. And even if we had an agreement today, it would take many years to implement and see the full benefit of a regional approach. But in a 5-year activity like ours, and with a strong spirit of, I think, coordination between the various, between the 5 countries and between the various efforts of the donor community, we believe we can make valuable progress toward that goal. Our efforts will aim to forge a shared understanding and a vision of what is needed, while at the same time we begin to implement activities on the ground to demonstrate the value of regional cooperation, taking the small steps towards that aspirational goal. The analysis of transboundary water resource management efforts around the globe all show that there are 3 fundamental factors for success: knowledge, governance, and cooperation. Knowledge is needed to understand the complexities of the WEF nexus concerns. And by this, I mean not only the technical issues, but also knowledge about the social and economic factors that are really at the root of stakeholder perceptions about the issues that we face. We will need to compile or generate new data and information on many levels to understand current status and trends, to identify priorities, to evaluate co-benefits and trade-offs, and to reach decisions that are actionable. Governance is, in many respects, our ability to translate that science and knowledge into policy and operations. In other words, our ability to make decisions and to act. This will require institutions that are strengthened with capacity and with the sustained political and financial support that they need. It will require equipping decision makers with new tools, with new frameworks and processes. And most importantly, perhaps, it will require our success in building the relationships, the trust, the diplomacy needed to bring the national agendas together around a common regional agenda. And thirdly, the cooperation calls for us to go beyond the single sector, the single place solutions, and to build a regional strategy that begins to look at water not only as not as a stock that is to be rigidly quantified and allocated, rather a flow that is shared under agreements designed to maximize benefits for the cooperating states. Cooperation is built on the premise of benefit sharing, which in simple terms calls for a switch of our focus from the physical volumes of water to be allocated to a focus on the various values derived from water use across all spheres, including social, economic, and environmental spheres. In other words, it's a focus that results in positive sum outcomes based on optimizing benefits, rather than zero-sum outcomes associated with dividing the water. So as a final word about our new activity, let me just say that we will aim to help to strengthen the region's knowledge, governance, and cooperation around an integrated systems and risk-based approach to the water, energy, food nexus. We will build upon the excellent work started by not only Smart Waters, but many other organizations in the region. We will engage stakeholders throughout the region to identify needs and priorities, and then implement a range of on-the-ground activities that will serve to demonstrate the benefits, the early benefits of cooperation. And we will help to develop and integrate models of the water systems and the energy systems that are codependent on each other. We feel that with such models and tools, we can inform the dialogue about not only the current pathway of development, but alternative scenarios that could demonstrate the many benefits for improving the way we operate both our water and energy systems. With that, Michael, let me thank everyone for giving me this time to share with you some ideas. And I look forward to meeting many of you in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for a very broad overview of a very complex topic that you're going to be engaging with over the next 5 years. And I will also add my own personal wish to say I look forward to coordinating and cooperating. You know, as you said, energy is one of those economic factors that need to have better water management. And we know that. We've known that for a long time. So the more we can all cooperate, meaning the people who are trying to help as well, and then most importantly, the people in the region, the better off we will all be. And also thank you for bringing forward the economic benefits and the economic costs of inaction. I think we're going to hear in a moment from Andre on aspects of that. So thank you, Richard. And I also wanted to note that we have a question in the Q&A box. Thank you from Uzbekistan. It's a specific question, and if it's okay, I would like to hold it until after the presentations, because I think it's about investment opportunities for small businesses with respect to key aspects of water management. It's a very good question, and I thank you for raising it. So I just wanted to acknowledge it and suggest that I hope you can stick around, and we will bring that up and offer it to our panelists when we finish the presentations. With that, I would like to turn the word for now over to Andre Verdi to present on the economic benefits of water cooperation and the costs of inaction.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you for inviting us to this session. Also welcome from my side. Well, a lot has already been said by the excellent presentations of Richard and Katja. And I would just like to briefly talk about money, or in other terms, about the economic benefits of water cooperation, or in a more negative way, the cost of inaction. Next slide, please. So let me start with well-known facts. Water in Central Asia is interactive and quite complex. I really like this map, which looks more like a metro map, but which really clearly evidences how complex the water sector is organized and how complex nature organized the natural ways, the natural waterways. And many issues have already been highlighted in the excellent introduction of Ambassador Rosenblum. I think the most important point I want to make here is that water is probably the most strategic resource in Central Asia. And it is a connector of economies, even if trade routes are closed, like they were during the first lockdown in March this year in Central Asia due to COVID. So obviously that transboundary aspect and the need for transboundary water management has been acknowledged since the independence of the countries in the region. And there is a long-standing commitment also and support to the Central Asia water sector by many, many international partners. But unfortunately, looks like the impact is rather low. It still has room for improvement. And that calls for a stronger coordination and cooperation of the external actors under the lead and guidance of the Central Asian states. Next slide, please. The low impact has been discussed many times and from various sides. There were publications on that. Let me just highlight one issue that comes from the World Bank. They made a comparison of the performance in the water sector, and unfortunately, the countries of the region, they are rather at the bottom end. Apart from Kazakhstan, they are at the very bottom end, apart from Kazakhstan. So that led us, Switzerland, to commission a report on rethinking water in Central Asia, which was done by Adelphi and CAREC. And this report, which also has the subtitle, The Cost of Inaction, highlighted some potential for improvement. Next slide, please. So here are some of the main messages. For those who really like figures, you can stick to the famous figure of $4.5 billion US per year that that countries are actually not gaining or losing. And the report explains how they came up with this figure. They make the link to different sectors like agriculture, like energy, but also very much the fact that the countries do have limited access to international finance due to a low level of internal cooperation. And the report explains in some more detail how they have calculated this figure, but I would just like to highlight, don't stick to the figure of $4.5 billion US. I don't think it's about the accuracy of that figure, but it's rather about the dimension. We are talking about a lot of money. We are talking about billions and not just millions. So I know that there was some controversy about the accuracy of the figure, but that's not the point that the report was trying to make. Next slide, please. The report also highlights some of the key socioeconomic indicators and resources in Central Asia. You see here in the green table some of the figures related to water, related to the water withdrawal, and that might already ring kind of an alarm sound to some of you when you have a look at the water dependency ratio in the middle of it. But it also highlights the area equipped for irrigation. It makes the link to energy production, and of course to some other indicators like population and GDP. I have come across some other interesting figures which again highlight some of the major issues in the region. They are actually from a very recent OECD report on the overview of the use and management of water resources in Central Asia. And some really important facts are, at the one side, we know that there is a huge infrastructure and a huge need for refinancing this infrastructure in Central Asia. So the CAREC Institute, which is different from the CAREC center in Almaty and in the countries, but it's basically linked to the CAREC platform. They came up with a figure of 33 to 38 billion US dollar per year as required investments in the water sector. And at the same time, so we have at the one side, we have a huge need for investment, but at the same time, there is a problem in the system. So the system works and operates with low water fees, with low tariffs, and there is no adequate approach installed in the countries to cover the actual operation and maintenance costs. And that goes hand in hand with the overall impression of an undervalued and underfinanced water sector. For example, as highlighted in the OECD report, there is a low budget for research, the salaries are rather low, and there is insufficient financing for fulfillment of functions of relevant regional bodies like the ICWC. In addition to that, we are currently doing some investigations into the water sector education, and also there we get the echo from students that the water sector is definitely not really interesting to them. They don't see incentives to engage really in the water sector. So that leads to another problem, that at the end of the day, there is a lack of experts who could actually run the water sector. So obviously these issues are true in each single country, and they are even bigger on the regional level. They sum up on the regional level, and they might even become more evident in times of crises like we have now, the COVID crisis, or just in a dry year as in 2020, where water was not that abundant as normally, and people are realizing that something is wrong and something needs to be changed. Next slide, please. The report, Cost of Inaction, comes up with a couple of recommendations. I would just like to highlight some of them. Might sound rather common sense based, but still important to get it started. The first is rather obvious. Start with things that are not contested. So start with things that everybody agrees upon or doesn't really have to engage with strong feelings, like topics like dam safety, improved irrigation practices, or have a look into the water quality and water quality monitoring. And with such activities, you can actually contribute to create trust that would then be needed for any deeper cooperation. A second point is you don't need to tackle the region as such with the two big rivers from the beginning with the entire Aral Sea basin and try to fix it at once, but rather focus on regional levels, try to start from a basin approach and have a look when you have a clearly distinct geographic unit, have a look how you could actually improve the management of the water resources in a more integrated or systemic manner. And another point, get it started with a polycentric approach. That means you should actually try to work on different levels and on different water-related topics. That can be irrigation, can be energy, but it can also include disaster risk reduction. It can make links to climate change adaptation. Obviously, it would make sense to include from the very beginning not only water supply, but also sanitation, and look at it at different scales, the local scale, the national scale, sub-regional scale. It is really important that we get the proper understanding that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. There is not one silver bullet. You cannot solve all the issues just with one go. But even more important, it's, I think, to understand, as already Katja highlighted in her presentation, the water problem cannot be solved in the water sector, at least not in the water sector alone. It needs a cooperation of different sectors, of different stakeholders, already on different levels, like the local up to the national level, but then certainly also at the regional level. Next slide, please. So now is probably a very good moment to get started, to get properly started. We have heard it, climate change, that's really a looming game changer. And that will force us into a different thinking. But the opportunity comes actually along with COVID. The COVID crisis has hit all of us very, very hard. And there is, if there might be something good about it, is that it hopefully will help us to act as a game changer for building back better, because business as usual is no option anymore. So key ingredients to change the game could start with, first and foremost, the notion that water actually has a value. I'm not talking about the cost here, I'm talking about the value. You really have to change the narrative to a more economic narrative. Water is a key driver of sustainable economic development, not only in Central Asia, but all around the world. And I think Richard made it very clear that water is really very, very important to each and every one of us, including the private sector, obviously. The provision of related services to water come with a cost, that's for sure. So you have to reconsider and rethink your tariffs, your taxes, your fees. It's not feasible to go on in a way that has been done in the last decades here in Central Asia, but also in other places of the world. Then, as Richard already pointed out very clearly, one major issue is water governance. It's about who gets what water, what services, when and how. And the global water crisis, which features prominently in the global risk report of the World Economic Forum for a couple of years now, highlights that the crisis is very, very important. It's always in the top 3 or top 5 of this ranking. But it's also known that the global water crisis is not kind of a natural disaster or a natural crisis, but it's really man-made to a large extent. Another point, which is, of course, of relevance with our changing climate, is that any action needs to be climate-proof. It needs to be climate-proofed, and the only way to get that is to base it on sound information. So we really have to improve the water information, water database. We have to share the data with each other, and we have to work together. And that needs to be done on the national level. That means different departments, different agencies, different ministries have to work together better, but of course also on the transboundary level. And Richard already pointed out, we need to have an institutional setup, and we have to build on trust and confidence and focus on mutual benefits. We have to move away from resource competition towards the thinking of mutual benefits. That will only go if there are new and innovative approaches also from the financing side. And next slide, please. I would like to highlight one of the potential means to this end, namely Blue Peace bonds, which were inspired by recommendations on financial innovation for water cooperation from the Global High-Level Panel on Water and Peace. And basically, they are, well, it's an instrument like bonds normally are, a fixed income instrument that represents a loan, but it is really targeting and focusing on water, on transboundary, multi-sectoral and joint investment plans. And it basically kind of compensates the willingness to cooperate with better incentive to get the money. There are many ways how you could do that. We are working on this instrument called Blue Peace bonds, which basically should blend money from different sources in order to partially cover or to address this huge investment need that we have in the financial sector and that we are struggling with because there is no single donor or no single national government who could cover this huge gap in financing. Next slide, please. So I'm already at the end. I would just like to highlight 2 more activities where Switzerland and the Blue Peace Central Asia program are involved. One is a research program with the title Water as a Driver of Sustainable Recovery. We had the first webinar at the beginning of November, and that program will continue for the next 2 years. So you're invited to have a look at what is available for now. And then I would like to flag the opportunity to join an online meeting, a virtual workshop on financing transboundary water cooperation and basin development, together with a multitude of partners, including the UNECE. And that virtual meeting will take place mid-December. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Andre, for a very thought-provoking presentation. You know, my initial reaction always when we focus on the cost of inaction is to get exactly where you brought us at the end, how do we realize the benefits of action? And then directing our actions in productive and constructive ways. So particularly in looking at questions of finance for when there are large investments required, money has to be found. And coming up with innovative and constructive approaches to finance for these activities is an important element as well. I'll look forward to revert to that question with you in our Q&A session. And at the moment, I would like to pass the word for the final presentation to Murat Beksultanov, who's going to give us a very interesting view of a very specific set of activities in Turkestan.
Thank you, Michael. Let me share my screen for the presentation first. Can you confirm that you can see my presentation?
Confirmed.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank some people that without whom this project would not have been possible, and namely will be Irina Ivanova, USAID Event Management and Innovation Facility Administrator, Svetlana Golovatskaya, Contracting Officer from USAID, and Larry Tweed, USAID Market Systems Advisor. So, you know, these are absolutely crucial people without whom this project would not have been possible. The topic that I want to cover today is water, and as previous speakers talked extensively on competing uses of water, we hear a lot of, oftentimes we hear that, you know, water is the most underpriced commodity, but it's only partially so. Water itself may not be may not cost a lot, but it carries an opportunity cost because of its competing use in other sectors of economy. And also, you know, if we're wasting water in one sector, then that the other sector, somebody else is not getting that water. And we're losing opportunity to create jobs, improve livelihoods of people in these adjacent sectors. And, you know, it always carries a cost. So the bottom line is for policymakers and local governments, how do you go about managing this complex interrelation between, you know, different water uses, and how do you balance it so that it's not a, you know, a zero-sum game, but it contributes to the development of an overall economic prosperity and benefit of the region or a particular area. So we focus mainly on agriculture. And if you look at water from the agricultural lens, when we trade agricultural products, we actually trade water, you know. So the bottom line of the agricultural production is, you know, you need water for agricultural products, and the better you use that water, the more efficient you use the water, the higher incomes that, you know, your farmers can get, the higher output they can achieve, and the higher yields. So if you measure agriculture from that perspective, it all becomes clear that, you know, you need to focus on the efficiency and effectiveness of water use in your agricultural systems, so you can improve output and by definition, income of the ultimate stakeholders or farmers. And the case in point with the water use is actually aggravated by the climate change. The climate, the changing climate conditions are putting even more stress on water, already stressed water resources. And, you know, here I included a chart of a Bogun reservoir in Turkestan region, which, as you can see, Turkestan region itself is very dry, and it gets most of its precipitation in March and April. And by July, August, when you actually need most of the water, all that water is gone. So you can see how this reservoir is filled to capacity, and the total capacity of this particular water reservoir is about 370 million cubic meters, and you know, by August 1st, it's almost gone. So this will only continue with the climate change, and the need for a better management plan and better tools is more pressing than ever today than it was ever in the past. A case in point, in the Turkestan region is, you know, from the ancient times has been clustered along the rivers, and the agricultural production has been, you know, very intensively utilized in these river basins. This is a Sirdarya river, and you can see on the satellite map here that most of the farms are located around, you know, or near the water source. But if you actually enhance the imagery with some spectral, you know, magic, you can see how water is distributed. You can see how much the local communities depend on this, you know, key resource. And this brought us to the to this project. We have been building a next generation platform with the help of some key and leading research scientists from around the world that would help local policymakers visualize and easily understand how water is used in their particular areas of management. By and large, if we look at the irrigation currently, it's somewhat of a black box. We supply water into the system, and some of it is used, you know, beneficially. Some of it is used for non-beneficial use. We just, you know, basically that water is gone. We can never recover it. So the goal of a good irrigation system is improve the beneficial use of the water, and then discourage or limit the non-beneficial use of water. But how do we go about it? So we first need to set a goal of a good irrigation system. It has to be, first of all, efficient. Efficient means that, you know, as a farmer, you don't overwater or underwater your plants. You supply just enough water that meets their physical, you know, demands. The irrigation system has to be adequate, or you know, it has to be adequate and equitable. So you need to supply water at regular intervals. You need to ensure that the water is supplied equally to all the farmers in the irrigation command area. And you know, you don't have any irregularities in the water supply. So in other words, you know, when the farmer needs water, you know, there's cases where he cannot get that water supply because of the maybe some defects or breakages in the irrigation, you know, supply system. Canals are outdated, and many other problems that could happen in you know, in this system. And the third main goal is productivity. So these two combined, and we mentioned, you know, a need for a better use of agricultural water. So we measure it by a crop per drop, you know, basically criteria. How much water is used to produce a unit of an agricultural output. So the more crop you produce per a unit of water, the better, you know, by definition your system is, and the better use of water is achieved by a farmer. So these performance criteria we hardwire into our system, and they help local community managers and policymakers easily visualize what happens at the field level. The question is, how do we measure it? You know, Andre mentioned that there's a lot of need for water experts, but there's very little demand for or desire to learn things about water management. So we need to make sure that tools that we supply are easy to understand and intuitive. So a person who's using those tools does not have to go through extensive training or extensive education process to understand what's being supplied to him, and how to understand these metrics. I will go, touch upon a bit about the science behind our platform. So at the core of it is the phenomenon called evapotranspiration. This is basically evaporation from the ground and transpiration from plants that we can measure by satellites. And from this particular concept, we can derive a variety of water use scenarios and water metrics that we can see from satellites. The satellite data is primarily what we rely on in our platform. So this allows us to achieve a large-scale monitoring of territories simultaneously. And here you can see a map of Turkestan region, and we measure applied water in every pixel of this map, which is 10 by 10 meters. And we can see, how much water is applied into a particular area, either in, units of measure of millimeters or cubic meters, which, is helpful for to local policymakers in devising irrigation schemes or new scenarios of investment scenarios of improvement of certain irrigation canals or other areas of irrigation. A little bit about Turkestan as a region, and from an agricultural standpoint, it's very challenging climate for a farmer to operate in, because the temperature swing could be very extreme. It also has a very high precipitation variability, which necessitates the use of irrigation, and irrigation is critical for to a farmer's success. The water is also used for competing, purposes. There's a robust livestock farming sector here, as well as vegetable and fruit production. So, from a perspective of a local government official, you need to understand which sector is performing better, which sector is utilizing water, more efficiently, and then which sectors I should be focusing on to create jobs and to create competitive, economic environment for the benefit of the population in my particular region. What we built, and I'm including some slides here, and if we have a little bit of time left, I will go into a live platform to show you how it's done. But we basically build a platform that visualizes the criteria and the performance indicators that I just spoke about in a very easy to understand manner for basically any user with even limited knowledge of water resource management. So we take a performance indicator for irrigation efficiency, for example, and this shows you how well the irrigation system functions. I'm sorry, this shows you how well the farmer is irrigating his particular area. So if whether he's overwatering his plants or underwatering his plants, we assign a score that from 0 to 10, 0 being the worst and 10 being the best, and then also color coded. So the areas in blue are farmers who are doing better than others in terms of watering their fields, and the red ones obviously are ones who are not. And then you can see a distribution in a histogram. So if you're looking as a manager or a government official at this particular area, which includes, over 10,000 fields, you can see sort of like how water is distributed, how water is utilized in this particular area. We can also focus on water productivity, which is measured in biomass units per unit of water used. We can measure it in kilos per hectare, centers per hectare. And then if we add crop data here, we can actually do crop-specific yield information and crop-specific water productivity metrics, which is what we're working on currently. So this also helps you understand which farmers are doing better, which farmers are producing their crops more sustainably, using less water, or same amount of water and producing more yield in a given area of interest. And this, also shows you the how your irrigation command area operates in terms of efficiency of supply of the water to farm gate. So, areas in blue are doing better. They perhaps have a better infrastructure. Maybe they're using better system of irrigation, drip irrigation, or other such implements. And then if we put all of that together, we derive for local government officials a metric, what we call a champion farmer, which is a farmer who is using less water to produce more crop, using water more efficiently in terms of not overwatering his plants, and then his irrigation system functions better than the comparative irrigation systems in the area. So those are, as a policymaker, you want to focus on those farmers and encourage others to follow their suit. They're doing something right. They're doing something better and then more efficient than others, and they're getting better results. And then we can also visualize how many of those farmers are in this particular given area, and it's a very useful tool for a policymaker. And then the benefit of using satellite technology is that it's easily transferable to other regions. So we don't need to install expensive tracking systems, and we don't need to install a lot of measurement devices. We can basically replicate these results in any other region of Kazakhstan or any other region in the world, really. With some calibration specific to specific crops or weather conditions or climate, but it can be done very easily over large territories. And the beauty of the satellite imagery is that it's open. So if anybody wanted to verify these results or cross-check them, they can also replicate them in their own labs or with their own equipment. So what's next? The next is in our plans is to include other regions in Kazakhstan, first of all, and then perhaps in Central Asia to expand the database and help other farmers and policymakers utilize these tools. We also plan to engage farmers, and we're building a farmer portal that helps farmers to sort of like compare their relative performance to other farmers in the region. So it helps them sort of benchmark themselves. How am I doing in terms of performance? And the next thing that we're working on is adding some additional insights and managing the data that we're getting into the system, into machine learning algorithms that help us reveal even more information about what's happening in a particular area of interest. So see, I have just a little bit of time left. I can go into Let me go into a live screen share of the system.
Just for a second, Marat, apologize. How long will this take? Because we only have 15 minutes left in the entire session, and we do want to get to question and answer.
It will take like 1 minute.
Perfect. Perfect. Just wanted to make sure.
So this is a live view of the system. And you can see how, for example, if I were to take this particular field, I can actually see how many, how much water that's been used over a particular, over a season. We can see, well, this is what I want to show you. So this is 2019, for example. It's applied water, how much water was applied to the field. And then you can see a stark difference between 2018 and 2019. How water deficit affects these particular fields, and we can go into other metrics. So, as a policymaker, and we're using this right now in Turkestan with the local branch of Ministry of Agriculture, who is utilizing this to sort of develop and then formulate a policy for water resource management in this particular area. So this pretty much concludes my presentation, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
And thank you, Marat. The power of analytics, satellite-based analytics for water management has grown enormously over the last decades in particular, but even in just the last few years. And it's, to me, very exciting to see the specific applications that you're working on to develop. And they have very clear and beneficial implications. Earlier, Richard was talking about, the need for knowledge, information sharing, and the ability to have people be empowered to see what works, what doesn't work, and how to improve, and why to improve. And again, this particular model provides an extremely powerful tool. And so thank you for sharing that with us, and I'm sure there will be questions. Rather than for the moment, I'm looking still, I only see one question we had earlier in the Q&A box, and I would like to respect that and pass it to the panel for anyone to answer. So I'm not going to try to be the one to answer this one, but it's a good question, particularly for the Central Asia Trade Forum. It's from, I believe, David Wahab from Uzbekistan. He says, my company is looking into promoting micro irrigation in Uzbekistan. And again, this links to several of our presentations. However, the biggest challenge is the cost. And we have tried to make the technology more cost effective by looking into creating manufacturing within the country, which can reduce costs, but can also be a significant investment. We also realize that the farmers still need some convincing and financial support to convert to more effective or efficient new technology. So his question is really quite simple. Are there any, being a business person, are there any programs to encourage or support the private sector to be more involved? I'd like to let anyone take that up, but I don't know, since Andre has experience in the financing area, and Yekaterina, particularly at the Regional Environment Center, has been working at the local level, would either of you care to take a first attempt to answer that? It's just programs to encourage or support the private sector to be more involved in his particular case, it's actually micro irrigation.
Thank you, Michael. I'm not in a position to give a very precise and accurate answer to this specific question, but I do know from Uzbekistan that Uzbekistan is very much into supporting the move towards more efficient practices. I do not know if they have a special track for supporting the private sector on that. But it would certainly be good to engage with the Ministry of Water Resources in Uzbekistan. And they have a Center for Analysis and Research. which looks into how to get more efficient in irrigation. So they might be interested actually to discuss this question. And I could potentially try to link you, David, up to these gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you, Andrei. And I don't know if you have anything to add, Katya?
Yeah, just a few words. I think it's crucial for the local level to involve such a private sector to their water management. And now we have only a few examples in some countries, and I think it's very important to develop in the further. But here, I think we should look more to the government subsidies for the private sector, and maybe they need to look through the policy and the new strategy which was developed in Uzbekistan. And they are very clear highlighted that we need to increase effectiveness of water use. So I think in the future, Uzbekistan will have more programs for support the private sector at the local level and support the implementation and the applying the new technologies at local level.
Thank you, Katya. And would either Richard or Marat want to add a word on this? Not required, but I think Marat may have an interesting take on sort of the link between, you identify champion farmers, and then how do you get the tools to them and have them demonstrate those to others so as to expand their use?
My 2 cents are based on empirical observations and what's happening in the particular area that we're working on in Turkestan. The reason why local government wanted a tool that could help them identify, champion farmers is that they're looking to improve agricultural production in what they call a green belt around this city of Turkestan, which is rapidly growing right now and expanding, and there's a need for food security and better livelihoods for local farmers. So one of the things that where private sector comes in is there's a number of international companies, including Rubicon, that are looking to implement new and innovative technologies like drip irrigation and pivot irrigation in the area. And the farmers that are already using water better than others are prime candidates for that. They're already doing something good and doing something right. So those are the ones that would be candidates for engagement for the private sector for things like drip irrigation and other technologies.
Michael, may I add a quick word, please?
Please do. I was going to offer you that moment.
Okay, thank you. I just quickly, I wanted to alert our audience that the new water and vulnerable environment activity will have a small grants fund for the purpose of stimulating grantees to become involved in STIP, science, technology, innovation, and partnership. So, the kind of activity that this question refers to would conceivably be very eligible for some kind of partnership and innovation. And I really like the idea of building back the in-country or in-region capacity to be a supplier of these new farmer technologies. So it's a great question. Thank you.
And just not to leave it go, there was a slight follow-up as well from David. He was just where he's talking about his experience more broadly to address these issues and noting, I think, a point that has been made by several of you in the presentations of the need, especially to focus on building human resource capacity in these areas of analytics and development to get people to understand the importance. Katya's worked at it on different levels. Marat is working on it. each one is working on it. So he's just asking if there are going to be any significant public outreach programs or plans to expand in this area. You may have something to say on that as well, Richard, and then I'll let others say.
Yeah, thank you. Clearly, we want to continue to build on the work that is underway to raise the capacity, the profile, and the participation in the university degree programs, but even the informal training opportunities that exist at the training centers in each country and other opportunities. So education, training, and building the cadre of water professionals, and not only at the technical level, but importantly at the leadership level, the management level, the various skills that are going to be needed to continue these negotiations, the dialogues, the decision making, the critical thinking and analysis skills. You know, it's a question of building the capacity of all countries within the regions to come up to the same ability to analyze these various scenario pathways going down the road. So the answer is clearly yes.
Thank you, Richard. And I'm just curious. I have a suspicion that Yekaterina may also have some insights to offer with respect to capacity building, and/or Andre.
Yes, thank you. Regarding to capacity building, of course, we can see that this is crucial for the local level. But again, if we look at the understanding of the benefits of cooperation, you need the capacity from the local people to understand these benefits. That's why it's very important to make some not only trainings for the professionals, water professionals, it should be more wider and should cover the full local population to understand from their side how they can increase their how do they can develop their territories together with their neighbors. This is very important, because for now they more thinking that the people from the upstream take more water, we received less. But if they understand this cooperation benefits, they can do more and receive more.
Thank you, Katya. Would you like to add anything, Andre? As you wish.
Yeah, maybe just to jump on what Katya said, it's really important, not only the how they can do it better, but particularly also the why. Why should they do it? And this is really key. You know, as a foreigner, I'm still struggling sometimes in discussions with people when we talk about the RLC. That it's not necessarily common knowledge that everybody understands and knows why the RLC has gone. And then people are referring to climate change, and people are referring to this and that. It's not about the blame game, but it's about the very fact that people have to get a better understanding of nature and the ecosystem services they are depending on. And only once they have this improved understanding, we can really work with them towards helping them to get better. And I really like the tools introduced by Mara. That's just great. But the thing is, if there is not a basic understanding why they should change something, then it's very, very difficult. It's going to be an uphill battle to try to introduce such tools, let alone, of course, also new curricula or adjusted curricula in universities. We are currently exploring how that can be doing. We are having a lot of interviews with universities, but also with students. And as I mentioned, one of the problems is that people are working in the water sector without any enthusiasm. They just say like, well, I didn't manage to go into economics, so I ended up in water, so that's what I'm doing now. And you cannot even blame them, because when they look at the salaries and the perspectives they have, you have to say, well, indeed, yeah, it's not really appealing. So it's really, we have to change the narrative.
And I, again, thank you, Andre, and being respectful and cognizant of everyone's time. I think we're going to bring this session to a close. We're reaching an hour and a half, which is our allotted time. But I also wanted to just make an observation in building on your last statements, Andre. And it's like, it's exciting to me, I said it before, to see the kind of application of satellite technology, imagery, and data analytics that Marat is bringing to this area. It's going to take time. It's going to take a long time, probably, to sort of make sure that that can really be conveyed. But there are exciting opportunities for work in this area to help improve things. It isn't all just about marching through the field in your boots and getting your feet wet all the time. There's a lot of other things. And that working in the fields, of course, is important as well. So there's no point in saying one is more important than the other. But in terms of adjusting attitudes and helping the next generation to see opportunities for change and opportunities to make a contribution, I think that's very exciting. So with apologies to all of our participants who I'm sure have other questions as well, I'm going to exercise my moderator's role and say thank you very much to each of our panelists for very interesting presentations and good interaction. Thanks to our audience for asking questions. I had a number of questions available to ask our panelists in case there weren't any, but we didn't have to go there. And I hope this was a useful moment for us all in these challenging times and represents a step on the path forward. So we'll look forward as well to keeping the conversation going and to maintaining connections as far as we can to help support the important work of managing water better, cooperating more in the region to realize the actions that can bring benefits to everyone. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone, panelists and particularly participants. We had quite a few, and thank you for being with us, and have a great rest of the day, evening, night, morning, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good afternoon.